But the most memorable occasions that took place at that time, when I was Minister of Shipping, Aerospace and Shipping. And as Minister of Shipping, I got to know the great giants of the Hong Kong shipping world, Siege Tung, Y.K. Pao, people like that, legendary figures. And they would always come to see me when they were in London. And the first time one of them said to me, I've just come back from Beijing. Well, why shouldn't he have just come back from Beijing? But it didn't take long for me to tumble to the fact that every one of them, every time I'd seen them, had just come back from Beijing. Now, this was a communist society. This was wholly alien to the culture of the capitalist world in which we all operated. And yet every one of these giants of Hong Kong's entrepreneurial flair had just come back from Beijing. Of course, I don't suppose they ever asked the British government's permission to leave Hong Kong and go to Beijing, and I don't think we would have expected them to. And I very much doubt if they ever briefed the governor of Hong Kong as to why they were going to Hong Kong. And I very much doubt if they ever reported the substance of the conversations to the British governor in Hong Kong. But of course, there was a dialogue going on. Someone had thought it through. They knew that actually the lease was coming to an end in 1997. And they were beginning to talk to the Hong Kong giants about what was going to happen to Hong Kong that long time ahead. And the deal, well, we all know the deal now. You move your manufacturing base into Guangzhou, and we'll ensure that your financial center is protected after the change. Brilliant, irresistible, long-term planning. But all I knew is that they'd only just come back from Hong Kong, from Beijing. There was an even more explicit example. And I don't come out of this story very well, but I'll tell it to you as it was. I was then asked, because they thought I was underemployed, to deal with a piece of legislation in the House of Commons called the Consumer Credit Legislation. Now, there are a lot of bankers here, and this is meat and drink to you, and you think it's the thing that matters. I tell you, that subject is pulverizingly boring. And to be invited to take legislation through the House of Commons when you're trying to flog Concord across the world stretches the tolerance, even the most ambitious politician. And when I was then told, there's a Chinese delegation coming, and we've got no one in the Foreign Office to deal with them, so we want you to do it, that was the point at which I nearly, well, this is ridiculous, of course I did it. And it was all done by interpreters, and we all know trying to have dialogue through interpreters is pretty stretching. And I was bored and furious and longing to get back to my department. And we were having this discussion about grandchildren and do you come here often, and you know, what's the weather like, and all this sort of stuff. And suddenly I heard the word change. Change, you know, this is a communist society, change. Opening up. Oh, pardon? Competition. What? And in about 5-10 minutes, the guys sitting there told me what was going to happen to China in the decades ahead. I went back to my department, I picked up the telephone, I rang the Foreign Office, and I said, I am dead, cold, sober. I must just tell you what has happened and what he said. And I repeated the conversation. The moral of the story? It happened. Today, who could argue? Who's surprised? But this was 1973. And someone was telling me, presumably assuming I was half awake and I would tell other people, precisely what was going to happen in China. And so the moral of the story is that they think long-term, and when they've come to a conclusion, they do it. The moral of that story for tomorrow is that they've got another plan, and they will do it. And they will use whatever resources, whatever energy, whatever determination is necessary to fulfill their national objectives, I admire that, I salute it, and I believe that we should understand it. Thank you very much.